The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 3925 in the name of Bruce Crawford on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau, setting out a business programme. I would ask any member who wishes to speak against the motion to press the request to speak button now. And I call on Bruce Crawford to move motion number 3925.
In doing so, Presiding Officer, I only say that the Bureau this morning we had a discussion about whether we should insert a statement tomorrow in regard to ordinary ferries. That statement will be inserted at 5 o'clock and the bulletin will be updated tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I formally move.
No members asked to speak against the motion, therefore I will now put the question to the Chamber. The question is that motion number 3925 in the name of Bruce Crawford be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed to. We now move to topical questions. Can I remind members that if they wish a supplementary to question number 1, please press the request to speak button now. And I call question number 1, Siobhan McMahon.
To ask the Scottish Government what action it will take to ensure that young people across Scotland have access to the relevant information regarding the legal and practical definition of rape.
Cabinet Secretary Ken McCaskill.
Relating to rape through the Sexual Offences Scotland Act 2009. This important legislation modernised and clarified the law to ensure it was appropriate for a modern Scotland. The legislation replaced the old common law offence of rape with a wider statutory offence which more accurately reflects modern society's understanding of what constitutes rape. The legislation also provided, for the first time in Scots law, a simple, easy-to-understand definition of consent. When the legislation was implemented in late 2010, we raised awareness of the reformed and modernised laws. There is also ongoing awareness raising. For example, the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service highlighted a recent successful conviction of a man for rape under the 2009 Act relating to the provisions that mean if a victim removes consent during sexual intercourse and the accused continues, then the crime is one of rape. I can confirm we are working within the Curriculum for Excellence and with specialist services to ensure that young people understand what sexual violence and rape is and that the message is clear that such conduct is totally unacceptable. And I will be attending and speaking at the ACPOS Rape Prevention Campaign launch event in Edinburgh on 13 September. This police-led campaign is designed to increase awareness of what constitutes rape and challenge attitudes and opinions about rape, including specifically, but not exclusively, attitudes of young men.
Siobhan McMahon.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware of the recent survey conducted by the charity Havens that suggests 1 in 20 males aged between 18 and 25 would try to have sex with a sleeping person? In light of this and George Galloway's ignorant and distasteful comments, and in line with its commitment, the Scottish Government's commitment to preventative action, will the Cabinet Secretary consider offer direct funding to individual rape crisis centres across Scotland, which will allow them greater freedom to respond to the local issues?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I do think that the matter that the member refers to is an issue of great concern. It's why I ended by saying that matters had to be dealt with, especially with regard to young men. I do think that the new legislation that this Parliament passed in 2009 is of benefit. It makes it quite clear what the definition of consent is. It also makes it clear that various matters that wouldn't have been categorised as rape are now dealt with. There are not, whatever may be suggested by any individuals, different categories as such of rape. It is a heinous offence. It can always be perpetrated in a manner of extreme violence that makes matters even worse. But the crime per se itself is entirely unacceptable in any shape or form, whoever it's perpetrated by, in whatever manner. With regard to funding, notwithstanding the huge cuts from Westminster, this Government has committed £34.5 million to tackle violence against women. That's an increase of over 50%. We're always keen to see what we can do to support significant ventures, and whether it's violence against women, rape crisis or whatever, outstanding work is done. So we're happy to look at any matters there. But I think the Government's commitment shown by that 50% increase is embodiment of how we're putting our money where our mouth is.
Question number 2, Kevin-Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether Aberdeen-City-Council has submitted any new tax incremental financing applications since rejecting the business plan incorporating the City Garden project.
Cabinet Secretary Alex Neil.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government has not received any new tax incremental financing applications since Aberdeen-City-Council rejected the business plan incorporating the City Garden project.
Kevin-Stewart.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary. The Labour-led administration have ignored the wishes of the majority of the people who voted in a referendum for transformational change in the city. Does the Cabinet Secretary believe that the new TIF proposal will create transformational change?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, we have not received any detailed information regarding the Council's updated proposals for the city centre, but the invitation to Aberdeen City Council was to submit a business case for a scheme involving the City Garden project, which would lever in a substantial level of private sector funding, not just any project in Aberdeen. It is not possible simply to transfer that invitation to a completely different project. In the future, the Scottish Government will consider rolling out TIF beyond the initial pilot projects, which potentially included the original Union Terrace Gardens. Any further TIF proposals would need to be considered if and when such a new round took place.
Kevin-Stewart.
Thank you. The Council, as the Cabinet Secretary has said, have rejected the £55 million of private investment. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that what we have with their proposals equates to the inverse Midas touch and will likely stymie future investment in the city from the private sector?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I totally agree with the member. I think the decision by the Labour group in Aberdeen is very anti-investment, anti-progress and anti-democratic.
Lewis MacDonald.
Will the Cabinet Secretary confirm that indeed the Chief Executive of Aberdeen City Council has written to him and written to the Scottish Futures Trust, I should correct myself, and asked that they confirm their willingness to consider an amendment to the application for TIF? Will he further confirm that the TIF application guidelines issued to Aberdeen City Council and other local authorities did not include any requirement for private sector funding per se? And will he give an assurance to the people of Aberdeen and the North East today that he and the Scottish Futures Trust will consider any amendment to the TIF application on its merits?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I have made it absolutely clear that the essential element in the TIF application was the Union Gardens project. If that is not included in any business case submitted by Aberdeen City Council, it cannot be considered.
Mark MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What Lewis MacDonald omitted to mention is that at the time of the TIF pilot scheme launch, the Cabinet Secretary announced that the Aberdeen TIF would require to demonstrate public support in order to proceed. The City Garden project demonstrated public support through the citywide referendum, but the current hodgepodge back-of-an-envelope proposal has not only been untested by referendum, but also did not feature in a single manifesto at the recent local council elections. Does the Cabinet Secretary consider that the Labour-led administration's alternative proposals have in any way met the public support test?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, when announcing which councils have been invited to prepare full TIF business cases for Minister's consideration last year, we said that Aberdeen City Council's plan to use TIF for the Union Terrace Gardens project would be progressed if public support for the project could be demonstrated. That support was demonstrated in the referendum that took place. 45,301 votes were cast in favour of the project and 41,175 opposed the plans. The invitation to submit a business case was for that specific project. Read my lips, for that specific project, which has demonstrated public support, not just any project within Aberdeen. And I repeat, there is no possibility of approving an amended TIF that does not include the central feature of the original proposal.
Richard Baker.
Isn't it the case that the Scottish Government will not consider any variance of the TIF proposal? This is simply sour grapes from the SNP who are determining to punish the Council for daring to reject their prepared plan involving hundreds of millions of pounds of debt for the Council, even if they punish Aberdeen at the same time.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the people who are punishing Aberdeen are the Labour people who are running Aberdeen. Not only are they punishing Aberdeen, they are taking this decision in defiance of the democratic wish of the people of Aberdeen. So I won't be taking any lessons from anybody in the Labour benches. And far from being sour grapes, I would suggest the member stops whistling in the wind.
Nanette Milne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I agree. Speaking about sour grapes, does the Cabinet Secretary not agree with me that, in fact, the Labour Party has made a laughingstock of Aberdeen? And I'm hearing from more people that Aberdeen is a city that likes to say no. Is this the image we want to have from our energy capital of Europe?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I say to Jeanette Milne, I believe the Labour Party has made a laughingstock of itself, and they will be punished appropriately at the ballot box by the people of Aberdeen.